Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. I'm excited about our guest today. He is one of the fishing legends all the way from Texas. We've got Clark Wendlandt today. Let me tell you about Clark. Clark kicked off his career by winning the Red Man All-American. Since that time, he has just vaulted to the top of the sport as a fishing legend. He is the three-time FLW champion, three-time FLW Angler of the Year, four-time FLW champion, and he's won the BASS Elite Series Angler of the Year in 2020, so he is still going strong. He's won over $2.2 million in tournament earnings, and he's a man of faith. So stay tuned. Next, all the way from Texas, Clark Wendlandt, coming up on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. I have as my guest today one of the legends in the sport. He's an Aggie, and he is all the way from Texas. Clark Wendlandt, welcome to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast.
Chris, I appreciate you having me. I look forward to doing it.
Man, I tell you, I'm so excited about this. I have followed your career. Probably the first time I ever heard about you was in 1992. I think you won the Red Man All-American out there. That was the first time I ever saw you, because I was a big Red Man All-American guy. And I mean, I was a bass fishing junkie, from the time I go, but you won the Red Man back then. And from then on, your career just skyrocketed, like three-time FLW Angler of the Year, four-time FLW winner, 18 times for the Forrest Elwood Cup. And you just won the BASS Angler of the Year in 2020. That is pretty impressive, man. How you doing? We were born the same year. I don't know how in the world you keep going like you are, because I'm winding down. I just got to tell you.
You're not winding down. I see you everywhere I go. I promise you that much. Yeah, I don't know. I the reason I keep doing it is because I enjoy doing it. And I don't have to. People ask me all the time, am I going to retire? And I'm like, I mean, why I'm living I want to say living the dream, but that's too much of a cliche. I just enjoy what I do.
Yeah, Clun's doing it at like 77, so you got a long way to go, man. So it's
I won't be doing it at 77.
Yeah, I tell you what, he is a machine. There's no doubt about that. He is an absolute machine, man. Let's start off with, you went to Texas A&M. I mean, a lot of people might not know that, man. You're an Aggie, so
yeah. Well, yeah, I am. I always wanted to go to A&M, and my mom was okay with me fishing for a living as long as I got a degree first. And so, A&M's where I picked. I kind of followed my, fiance or girlfriend at the time, and now we're married there. And Patty, and she went to A&M, and so I was a year behind her, and I followed her there. And yeah, I've got a lot of great memories. We lived in College Station for a good while, even after I graduated.
That's pretty cool. And what did you major in Texas A&M?
I majored in wildlife and fisheries, which, I was actually pre-vet, and vet school biochemistry kind of ate me up. And I Q dropped it the first time, and then I got to it the second time, and I Q dropped it again, and I was like, I'm changing majors because I can't do this right here. So,
man, I dropped math one.
I wasn't going to be a vet. I was going to be a fisherman. So, in my mind, I just needed a degree, so I went to wildlife and fishery sciences.
Man, I did the same exact thing. I knew I was going to seminary, so I just needed a degree, and it was like, it took me 5 years to get out of my little school. I couldn't imagine going to A&M, but I think South Carolina's playing A&M coming up in basketball, so we got a big match coming up.
That's right. That's exactly right.
We got to take the Aggies out like that. Well, let me tell us a little bit about how you started fishing. What was the whole deal? I know you're competitive. I know you like pickleball, and I know you're like a ping pong guru. And so tell us about how the fishing got into your blood.
Well, I am competitive. I got my competitive nature from my grandmom first, and then my mom. And my dad wasn't all that competitive. He was a great athlete, but he wasn't very competitive. And so I basically, kind of had a love for the outdoors. Used to hear about Jimmy Houston, Bill Dance, Roland Martin, and those guys that made a living doing it. And so and then I ended up fishing with a guy that could fish, like really fish, not just cast, just, he could skip under docks and do things with a rod and reel that I couldn't really even imagine. And I kind of just got the fever for it. And that was about when I was a junior in high school, is kind of when I fished with him. And so from that point on, really, it's just been a learning curve of, chasing bass and trying to figure them out. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure them out because they change all the time and it's always different. And if you don't stay on the edge of it, you're just going to be behind.
Yeah. Well, did you start out at the club level? Is that kind of what you did, or did
No, I basically started out just fishing regional tournaments. Not even, sometimes it'd be team events, and sometimes it'd be just like a regional, like a red man style tournament, or something that was even a jackpot. I'd fish anything I could get into, and then but I never went the club route. Then I just kind of graduated to a little bit higher level regional tournaments. Once I won the Redman All-American, I started fishing bass, and that was in '92. And so my very first BASS event was September '92 on Thousand Islands out of Clayton, New York. And so I've got great memories there. And, I fished I fished bass until about '98. It seemed like what happened is that a new tour came along, and that was FLW.
Yeah.
And it actually started in '96. My first year was '97. And then from there, I just basically, I fished both for a few years because we could do that. I don't know if you remember that, but that was, back at right around 2000. Yeah. And then my big sponsor at the time was Kellogg's, which Kellogg's was, I had a Tony the Tiger boat. I mean, I had a cool sponsor.
You've been on the Cornflakes box.
I have.
On a box of cornflakes
box. Yeah. I mean, there was some great perks that came with that. And, but then Bass had something that came along. It was about 2002 where they had a Bush sponsorship. And so they required you to put a Bush logo on your boat. Right. And Tony the Tiger didn't need Bush on there. And so I just decided that I wasn't even going to ask Kellogg's. I just decided that at that point, this is where my allegiance lies, at least for the time being. And so I went FLW and had a great career at FLW. Won some Anglers of the Year, won some titles, made some great friends. I mean, really, the majority of my career has been there. And then in 2019 is when I came back.
Right. That was an exciting time when FLW first started. I remember, their tagline used to be the next generation. And dude, I would fight people to get to the TV to be able to watch FLW. They had the greatest show ever. I mean, it was amazing time to be in bass fishing. But I do remember the Bush beer controversy. I mean, that was a polarizing event. It is almost as polarizing back then as the live scope is now. I mean, it's like everybody was just bam, bam, kind of doing stuff like that. Everybody was picking sides and things like that. And, people think that stuff's new in bass fishing, but that's been going on for a long time. It's been a lot. Hank Parker, I interviewed Hank Parker, and they had almost that same controversy back, in the day, when Miller High Life was one of the sponsors of Bassmasters, and Hank didn't want to, he was going to quit Bassmaster because he wasn't going to fish a classic because and Ray Scott, so we don't have to worry about it. We just dropped Miller as a sponsor. And so that got him off the hook with that. So that kind of stuff's been going on for a long time. People don't realize that a lot of times. They forget the history of it all. Well, listen, the first two events are not exactly in your backyard, but they're pretty close. You got to be excited about the way this year's starting off.
Yeah, I am. I'm excited that, first of all, that it's just different this year. I mean, to me, I love going to the same lakes in Florida. That's all fine and good, but let's fish them a different time of year. So this year we're fishing Florida in like April instead of January, February, and we're starting in Texas. And, there's a big risk starting in Texas in that time of year because it could be just really cold.
Yeah.
But I think we lining up for a pretty good weather week coming up, and probably the next week after that also. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not that far from the house. I haven't fished Toledo in I used to fish a lot of tournaments there, but I hadn't really fished it in about 10 years. And I didn't go over there and practice. I knew there'd probably be some rain and it changed conditions. And so I just thought, I know how to drive around the lake. Other than that, I've just got to go figure them out when I get there.
Right. It is a fascinating year this year. Going to Florida in April is going to be fascinating for me, just to see how it, I've seen it so many years, everybody fish it in January and February, and to go in April is going to be interesting,
I think it's going to be fun. I mean, I just love going new places. Back in the FLW days, we'd always go to Beaver Lake, and I always wanted them to go a different time of year. And sometimes they would. They'd go in pre-spawn, they'd go in spawn, they'd go in post-spawn, but it was always in that kind of spring period. And I just think as a bass fisherman, it's hard a lot of times going to places that you fished and had success other years, because if you go and you've had success somewhere, then it's typically hard not to go back and try to do that same thing. But doing that same thing really doesn't work very often. I mean, like almost never. I mean, you really got to go out and find new areas, find new patterns. We literally on Toledo Bend, we have no idea what's going to be happening. There's going to probably be a bunch of different ways you can do well. We know the lake's fishing good, and it ought to be fun.
Man, I know what I love about you is you like to find your own fish. I mean, you get out there and you just say, okay, I'm going to get on there and I'm going to, I'm tuning out everything else and I'm just going to go and do my thing. Beaver Lake's been pretty good to you over the years, though. That's been pretty cool.
Yeah, Beaver Lake's been a really good lake, and I do like finding my own fish. I think anybody that's really good's got to, just about. I mean, that's the way, having information about a place that that you can find on the internet, just you're smart to know. How many pounds is it going to take to do well in a tournament, and what kind of cover does this lake have? Is there timber? Is there rock? Is there grass? Is it a lowland reservoir? Is it a highland place? Is it a river? Is it tidal? Those kind of things are the kind of things that you can find, and you can find 10,000 videos nearly on any place you go these days. I'm not a big video watcher. I don't really. To me, what I've learned is that it's almost always going to happen because you go and you figure it out and you do it. And it doesn't mean I'm always going to do well, because I obviously don't always do well, but I feel like going and finding them on your own is pretty much the only way you can really do well.
That's pretty cool, dude. I just saw Patty go by the mirror right there. Tell her I said hello. We're glad
Okay, I will.
I really appreciate you guys so much. I know that, right before my wife passed, Patty was always telling me she's praying for me and you guys were praying for me, and I appreciate you. And you married well. We all know that, but you did. You did. You did.
I did. I really did marry well. And she's going to be traveling with me some this year. Not quite as much. We're taking care of her mom now, and so it's just harder. It's that time of life, and she's traveled really well, taking care of we took care of my dad and my mom also, but I have a brother, and my brother did a lot of it, and so. In this situation, we're taking care of her for the most part, and but it's great. I can't imagine a better way. I think it's the way it ought to be, and if you can possibly do it, it's great.
Tell Patty we can see her in the mirror, so we appreciate her being on the Bass Chaplain podcast. That's going to be a highlight. That's going to be a highlight of the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. That'll be a great deal. Well, tell us a little bit. All right, I know that you've probably already packed, but you're probably still packing too. Tell me about how you pack up. The first tournament of the year, that's got to be tough. Usually it's a new boat situation, new deal. You're packing up. I've watched your man cave video where we went through all that. So what's it like, the packing situation? I guess when you're in Texas, you at least know, well, if I had to, I'd come back home and grab something.
I guess so, or get Patty to bring me something if I needed to. But yeah, I don't even know if I do. I've done it a lot of different ways. I don't know if I do it the best way. Basically, what I do is at the end of the season, I'll kind of go through all my tackle. And I had some big changes this year. I went with Bill Lewis and Buckeye and Big Bite Baits and got, Left Strike King. And so I've got some new baits, and I've spent a lot of time fishing this year. A lot of my, getting ready for the season has to do with fishing, because to me, listen, I know I'm a good fisherman. I'm not saying that as braggadocious at all, but but really, you're only as good as the last bass you catch. I mean, that's just the way everybody is.
Yeah.
And when you're starting to catch fish, and when you're catching a lot of fish, you're confident. You just have confidence that you can make quick decisions when you need to make them. And so I'm not much of a video watcher, but I'm a heck of a fisherman. I like to
Yeah.
fish, and
Yeah.
I try to keep up with new trends and what's going on. And that's hard to do if you're not going to sit there and watch video after video after video. But then it's packing the truck and packing the boat and getting the boat ready and making sure you have all the stuff you have. And I travel with Frank Talley,
Frank the Tank.
it's nice because if I don't have it, Frank's probably got it. And we know enough people on tour now that if somebody else, if we don't have it, somebody else might have it. And so what you're packing for is to bring everything you can bring to deal with whatever fishing situation you're gonna face. And at the end of the year, I try to purge everything that I'm not using. And a lot of times I'll keep stuff in there basically that just it's a crutch, really, for no other lack of a better word. It's just a crutch. You basically caught them 15 years ago doing something, and you're just scared not to take it with you. But I try as hard as I can to purge out the old stuff, put in what I'm going to fish with, and head for the lake.
Man, that's tough to do. I don't know if you like this. Andy Montgomery takes all of his hooks off every year, all of his crankbaits. There's no way. I mean, there's two things I found I really have a tough time with. Number one is loading my 9mm, putting bullets into my 9mm, and number two is changing hooks. Man, you guys can change hooks so fast. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. But he takes all of his hooks off every year. I couldn't imagine. I've got hooks that are older than me on my
me too.
on my baits.
Hey, I promise you, you don't have to do that because listen, I mean, if I keep the hook on there until I'm about to use it in a tournament, and then I'll change the hook.
Then you change it out. Yeah, that's a good thing. Well, let's talk about hunting a little bit. I know you love to hunt, and I love watching. I just love watching your stuff. I'm like, where's Clark going to be this way? Where's he going to go? It's down to Mexico. What did he shoot this day, man? You have shot some monster deer in your life, and tell me about the hunting passion, man. You probably rather hunt than fish, wouldn't you?
Well, that's interesting. I love them both. And the hunting season is so much shorter. It feels awfully intense. So basically, we end about September 1st, and then about October 1st, hunting season starts. And so, when hunting season starts, and it goes for me until about the second week in January, and that's about when I quit hunting. And but I have a passion for it. My brother and I were about a year apart, 14 months in age, and he's a lot better hunter than he is a fisherman, but he still loves fishing. And I'm a lot better fisherman than I am a hunter, but I still love hunting just as much, and we enjoy doing it together. And so we hunt in Texas. We have a ranch in Texas. My folks. It's about 1,100 acres, and it's a great hunting place. We got a lot of big deer, and so this year it was kind of interesting. We went to bow hunting only on it, and no corn, nothing, no bait, nothing. Wow. So you just basically went out there with a bow and arrow and saw if you and I killed two, and I mean literally I could have shot one other big one that I saw, and neither one of the ones I killed were giant, but they were both old. And but I'll tell you what, there's no funner way to hunt than that. That was as fun as it gets. And then in Mexico, I've done the Mexico hunting now since about 2000, so 23 years, and it's just there's just nothing like it. It's just big, giant land. It's got some mountains. We've got about 40,000 acres, and we're chasing deer. We don't use corn. We just chase them and hunt, up high and see as long as we can and see as far as we can. And, just try to kill a big buck. And it doesn't happen every year. Really doesn't happen all that often, but I have a lot of fun trying.
Is it is it more stand hunting, or is it more, hey, we're out moving like elk hunting? Is it like that?
No, it's all stand hunting for what we do. And a lot of it's getting up on mountains, but it's either getting on mountains or it's getting on or hills and just glassing. And then also in tripods, we use a lot of tripods. Okay. And so it's kind of brush country. But there's some areas of it that are fairly open, and you can catch a big one coming across some of that open ground from time to time. but it's just wild. It's just wild country. And, for lack of a better way to put it, there's just, it's big, giant land with nobody there. And that's what we like about it.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, that sounds good. You know, Clifford Perch always trying to get me to come up and walk around elk hunting. I went up there one day with him, and I walked with his dad for about 200 yards up a deal. And I said, I'm not doing this. Elk hunting is a synonym for hiking. And that's all it is. And those guys they'll walk you in the ground. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
they will.
unbelievable how those
They
guys
will.
do all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. Well, you know, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is I wanted to ask you about when you started fishing. Okay, when you first started out, what were your go-to techniques, or what is it? What do you feel like you're strong? Because it's really wild on your bio. You know, you're from Texas and you fish a lot of power fishing, but your favorite lake is Thousand Islands. You love up there. So tell me about that. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, the reason that happened is that I started out, the way I enjoy fishing, or I've always had the most success is fishing fast and covering a lot of water.
Yeah.
And that just works really well for smallmouth, because smallmouth are such an aggressive fish that if you put it in front of enough of them, you fish that fast style, you can catch a lot of those big smallmouth. And the biggest ones a lot of times will bite, something moving really fast. Now, the whole smallmouth thing's all changing now because of live scope, but it's going to change. And sometimes I look at the change and I be a little bit disappointed about it, but that it's the way it is. As far as the way I started, I was probably pretty similar. Just I like casting. If I really could say my very favorite way to fish, it's when casting makes a difference. I like to be able to cast accurately, and if I'm fishing a way that it doesn't matter if I hit here or if I hit there, I don't really. That's not my favorite way. My favorite way is if I have to hit there to catch one, then that's the way I like to do it.
Man, since we broached the subject of the live scope, let's where do you think is headed? I mean, where do you, I know you got some guys that are dead set against live scope, and you got some guys that are saying those guys are crazy and stuff like that. But what's your opinion on the whole whole deal?
Well, the very best thing I've seen on it, that I watched, was a Mercer podcast that had Randy Blockett on it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Mercer, I had just done a podcast with Mercer just right before that, and I knew what Blockett's stance on it was. And when I listened to that, Mercer would agree with what Blockett said, but he would then say, in other words, Blockett's like, instinct matters. You shouldn't be able to see everything. There ought to be unknowns in fishing. And Mercer would say, well, what about this? And, I like Bass's stance for this year. I like their stance. I kind of wish they'd have limited it to just one transducer, and let's not have them on the trolling mode. I mean, let's not have them on the jack plate. Let's not have more than one. I wish we just had one. But at the same time, I like the fact that they're going to look at it hard for the year. My real feeling on it, though, is it doesn't take as much skill to do it. I don't think. I see the young kids saying, yeah, it takes just as much skill. The same 10, 12 guys dominate. Well, and I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, if you stick your trolling motor down and you look around and you got about 6 or 7 baits and you figure out which 6 or 7, then you just got to look around until you find enough fish. And that's not the same as not knowing what's there and making gut and instinctual decisions based on, man, I think this or I think that, but we don't know. With live scope, and I think there ought to be a certain amount of unknown in fishing.
Yep. What's really frustrating for me about live scope is now I can see the fish that I can't catch, and so that's pretty bad. When
it is frustrating.
It is. It really is. It
is frustrating. But I'll say one more thing, Chris, about that whole thing is that I use it. I do use it, but it's because of my competitive nature. I want to be able to compete. And, I do I think it should be there? Not really. But am I going to continue to use it? Yeah, because I want to compete.
Yeah, I've got one on my boat too. I like looking at them too. Yeah. So you're a pickleball player. I saw that on there. What do you think about pickleball? How'd you get into
Pickleball is a
pickleball?
really cool game. You know, it's halfway between. I grew up playing tennis, and I grew up playing ping pong, and it's a game that's about halfway in between ping pong and tennis. And you don't have to run quite as hard. Although if you play singles, you can get plenty good workout. But we got one in my driveway. I got enough room in my driveway to have a pickleball court, and when company comes over, family comes over, we're playing all the time, and it's a fun game. And the great thing about it is anybody can do it. I mean, literally, you can be terrible or you can be great, and there's still a place for you in pickleball.
Man, I love it. You know, the other day I saw a video with John McEnroe, and he
Yeah,
came on and said, and then there was pickleball, and they started, they're getting all the old great tennis guys,
right,
all the old
right.
guys back into pickleball, and
Yeah,
I'm always up for watching some McEnroe, and doing that
heck
on the
yeah.
pickleball. That's really cool. That's a really good deal. Hey, so one of the things, man, you guys, I remember we did a Bible study one time, and I was doing it. I was talking on how I do my prayer, and I was ordering, I kind of, I pray on certain days, and I just kind of brought like a graft out there. And Patty came and took a picture of it. She said, I want to get a picture of that. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. I know you've heard this before. I've heard you speak before, and faith plays a big part in your life. And
It
so tell
does.
us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I became a Christian in 1998, and my story, just real quick, was I went to a men's Bible study that Patty actually encouraged me to go, and the it just I really could see what a godly man or being a man was like, and it made sense to me. Um, and so that made me start like really researching and grabbing and reading and listening. And it wasn't long after that I put my faith and trust in Jesus. And um, you know, each and every day is still a struggle for each and every one of us, just with sin in itself.
Mm,
But
yeah.
I know that I've got faith. I've got faith that Jesus is there, and I love Him, and I put my love and faith in Him. And a lot of what I do, I base on I try to live the best life I can live, and try to put Jesus at the front. I fail a lot, and I'll be the first to admit that. But yeah, He's really important in our lives.
We all do. And I've heard you say before, I watched the time when you were speaking and you talked about George Washington and you talked about, character, that character matters. And you're big on character. You're big on, hey, I want to be who, God wants me to be. And, I've seen you walk that out, in life, and, you're very well respected in the industry and just, in the fishing world in general. But I appreciate your stance. I appreciate that, your friendship, and I appreciate you taking time. I mean, there are so many great podcasts. I love Mercer's podcast. I can't get enough of it. Whenever a Mercer podcast drops, I'm always there. And anytime when you mention Randy Blockett, anytime Randy Blockett's on there, that's going to be like, it's going to be blowing up. And I love those guys, but we have got such a lot of good guys, in the industry, and it's a great pleasure to be around you guys. And I really appreciate you taking time to be on this podcast today, man.
Well, I absolutely enjoy doing it, and I'm glad you asked me. And I wanna bring up the time that you and I first met, or at least the first time I can remember. And I don't even remember who was hosting it. It was either Mark Davis or Alton Jones, but it was a kids camp. And you show up, and literally you got those buck teeth in your mouth the entire time. And I mean, you couldn't look at you and be serious. I mean, every time I'm looking at you, I'm laughing, and everybody else was laughing too. And I mean, that was a long time ago now. That was
That was actually Jay Ellis camp. Jay Ellis
Hey
did that
Yellis
in
camp. That's
Tyler,
exactly
Texas.
right.
Yeah. And he asked me to come in and play kind of a character. And I never broke character the whole
No,
time
you
until
didn't.
right at the end until
Yeah.
they, I remember when I took my teeth out that everybody was like, man, like that. But that was so much fun. We had a bunch of kids there, and There's some of those kids went on and won big tournaments. I mean, they really
Yeah.
did. That was a great, great event over in Tyler, Texas. I actually got a chance to catch bass that day, which was a miracle. And so I love Lake Tyler. That was a great little
That
lake.
was
It had a
fun.
lot of hydrilla in it, and it was a lot of fun. I love
That was
the
fun. Well,
hydrilla.
and a lot of people, Chris, don't really understand that and then maybe they do, but living the life of a professional fisherman, it's just not like a just a dream life all the time.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
yeah,
struggles, and a lot of guys are you know, just like in anything, struggling with life. I mean, life's hard a lot of times,
yeah.
and whether you're going to catch enough fish to be able to pay the next entry fee, pay a bill that you got to pay when you get back, and luckily I'm past that part, but I still struggle with all that stuff too, and we appreciate you being out there because for those that don't know, Chris is out there every tournament. He's at the tournament, right there, ready to pray for us and give us a good word, and man, that means a lot to us.
Man, I appreciate y'all putting up with me and letting me hang out with you guys. But man, it's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to see you. I'm actually packing up myself, so I'll be leaving Saturday morning. We're going to do a little meet the elites over there at Siloam Baptist Church, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. And so I look forward to seeing you when we get there. But man, we will see you there. And folks, thanks you for listening today. I appreciate it. This is going to drop on high noon on Friday. And so make sure you tune in to catch Clark Wendlandt. And we're going to be breaking up some stuff, put some shorts up as well. And this is the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up.